All right, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful people, you're welcome. It's 8 minutes gone past 8 o'clock hour, the day we've been waiting for, the 26th of August, 2015. I'm Oluwaseun P, and you're welcome to the August gathering. It's the first of its kind, a radio colloquium here on 99.3 Nigeria Info to craft the people's position on post-2015 national development. I'm going to introduce the August guests in a short while, but we are going to have the bullet points of the news. We'll be doing things very differently on the show today, so you won't get news as you usually get to top and bottom of every hour. But Onome is here with just the bullet points so that you just stay in touch still. Onome?
Yes, the news update here says the Arewa Consultative Forum urges the federal government not to negotiate with Boko Haram. Uniben VC tasks varsity dons on research to create jobs. Teenagers bombed Amaturu, killed pregnant woman and 3 other people. Police warn NURTW members against violence. Only morning ends, business activities resume in Ife. NDLEA probes Arik attendants caught with 105 million naira cocaine. China shares rise amid sharp volatility. Syria's Assad confident of Iranian and Russian support.
Okay.
And the final one here said Donald Trump renews feud with Fox News host Megyn Kelly.
All right, Onome, thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get on with it. On the phone line right now, hot and live from Abuja, we have the special guest for the August gathering today, Mr. Femi Adesina, who is the special advisor to the president on media and publicity. Good morning to you, Mr. Femi Adesina.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to have you on the August gathering, the panel today.
My pleasure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Femi Adesina is a respected journalist with an illustrious career of almost 3 decades. He is someone that we're so delighted to have on the August gathering today, the current president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, and until recently he served as the managing director and editor-in-chief of the Sun newspapers. He is a prolific writer. He started his career at the Vanguard newspapers as features writer before later moving to the defunct National Concord newspapers. He was also pioneer staff of the Sun newspaper, where he became the editor and later the managing director and editor-in-chief, position he recently quit to serve as image maker for President Muhammadu Buhari. In 2007, Femi Adesina was named the editor of the year by the Nigeria Media Merit Award. Good morning to you, Femi Adesina, and you're welcome to the August gathering.
Thank you.
All right, in the studio I also have, and I'm so delighted to have her here as well, someone who Ayo Thompson referred to as a role model earlier, but she, words will fail us to really introduce and honor this woman, Ndidi Onwuneli, a Nigerian social entrepreneur, and might I add, MFR. She's the founder of Leap Africa and co-founder Ace Foods. She has about 19 years of experience in international development and business management, working with multinational firms, the public sector, and international organizations. In 2002, she founded Leap Africa, a non-profit organization that focuses on encouraging leadership and development initiatives for youth and business owners in Nigeria. She's also the co-founder of Ace Food Processing and Distribution Limited, an indigenous agro-processing company in Lagos, Nigeria, and one of the directors of Sahel Capital and Advisory Partners, a leading advisory and private equity firm in Nigeria that focuses on agribusiness and manufacturing sectors. Now, Ndidi has received numerous honors and awards. In 2003, she was recognized as a global leader of tomorrow and young global leader by the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. She was also recognized as the Young Manager of the Year in 2005 by This Day newspaper, and is listed as one of the 20 young, powerful African women by Forbes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Ndidi Onwuneli in the studio with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's good to have you on the August gathering, Ndidi.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. All right, we also have Chris Ngwodo, and Chris is a regular contributor on our panel show. He's a writer, a speaker, a public intellectual, and strategic communications consultant. He has facilitated strategic management and organizational change retreats for a range of private sector and public sector organizations. He has confidentially written speeches and high-level policy documents for offices in the federal government and state governments, as well as for development sector institutions. He's a blogger, a regular contributor to international and local media such as CNN, the BBC, Radio France, AFP, Voice of America, and Al Jazeera. His work has also been cited by Time Magazine and the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations. Good morning to you, Chris Ngwedo. Good to have you on the August Gathering today.
Good morning, Sean.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're also expecting Olawale Olaleya, who's the group politics editor of This Day newspaper. So we'd do a proper citation for him when he steps in, as well as Toyosi Akelu Ogunsiji, and when she comes, we'd also do a citation for her. She's the founder and CEO for Rise Networks. Now, observing this August Gathering is a scholar and astute professor, Professor James Sayo of the School of Media and Communications at the Pan Atlantic University. And Professor Sayo can wave to us here in the studio. He would be observing and doing an executive summary at the very end. Now, Mr. Femi Adesina, would start with you this morning. This August Gathering is really to craft the people's position on post-2015 national development. You are the spokesperson for the presidency, and this government in a few days would be marking its first 100 days. Could you tell us, it's been 100 days, it will almost be 100 days. What has been happening?
Very much, and thank you for inviting me to the August Gathering. I'll say yes, 100 days, a few days away, still early days in the life of an administration that has 48 months to spend in office. But then, a lot has been happening in those days. I like to talk about tangible and intangible achievements, because you find that the ones that are intangible go a long way to really affect even the tangible ones. And the first intangible achievement of this administration I like to talk about is high level of believability. You know, that Nigerians can be very cynical, can be very skeptical about their government. When government makes promises, when government makes pronouncements, they take it with a pinch of salt. But you will notice that this is a government that has high level of believability. Nigerians believe that they can trust this government. The trust quotient is very high. And for me, that is very, very, very important. It's a big achievement for this government. It's an intangible achievement, but it's a very, very important one. I hope you read that post rating that came sometime last month that says more than 70% of Nigerians believe in this government. They trust it to deliver. And it is very good. It is very, very important to believe in the government that leads you. Because if you don't believe in government, it's going to be difficult for you to also cooperate with that government. So the believability ratio of this government is very high. If this government makes a promise, a large number of Nigerians believe that it will fulfill that promise. Now, to talk about the tangible achievement, you need to look at those ones vis-a-vis the promises made. What were the promises made, particularly during the campaigns and electioneering? The government said it will fight insurgency, it will create a secure country. As the president has said repeatedly on many occasions, you can't rule a country that you have not secured. And we have seen him making efforts to secure the country. You know, he came in inheriting the insurgency in the northeast and so many other cases of insecurity in different parts of the country. You had kidnapping, you had armed robbery, you had all that. But of course, the biggest and highest was insecurity in the northeast. And we know all that the government has done with the president going as far as G7 summit because of this insecurity. He has gone round our neighbors, Chad, Niger, Cameroon, Benin Republic, and he has formed a coalition of these countries. And that coalition is in force now. And I tell you that that insurgency in the northeast has its days numbered. It's not as serious and as potent as it used to be. There are still pockets of bombings here and there, but you don't have the insurgents engaging our troops in pitched battles like it used to be. You don't have them seizing territory like it used to be. It also shows you that the government is winning the security war as it promised. Then again, it promised to look at the Nigerian economy and boost it with a view to creating jobs. I tell you, that is work in progress. The government is looking at the economy. Don't forget that last month, our foreign reserve got a boost of $2 billion in just 1 month. The foreign reserves went from about 9 point something billion to about 11 point something billion dollars, about $2 billion in 1 month. And then, despite low oil prices, governors will tell you that the money shared last month was the highest in recent times. Now you ask yourself, what happened? Just because leakages are blocked. So this is a government that has promised to look at the Nigerian economy, give it a boost, and we're beginning to see the signs that would happen. And don't also forget a promise anti-corruption. You know what's happening on that front? Anti-corruption. The president has said Nigerian money in billions of dollars was taken out of those countries, stolen, looted, and that they will be recovered. And he has said in a matter of weeks, those who looted that money will have their day in court. So a lot has happened under this government, and a lot will still happen. What shall we say of the cleanup of Ogoni land? Ogoni land that have been there with the environment beleaguered over the years and the seasons. This government has made plans to clean up that place. Of course, many others, the police is to recruit 10,000 personnel quite soon. There is a new attitude. The NNPC is being cleaned up. A lot is happening in Nigeria.
All right, Femi Adesina, I'm glad that you started off talking about trust as an intangible element and something that you see that, shows that there's a new sheriff in town and that the game has changed, and that with Nigerians believing and trusting this government, things will begin to, move on the right direction. Now talking about this trust, how do you see that, all Nigerians of all forms and shapes can, indeed trust this government? Because what we're hearing and the feelings that we're getting is that, a certain section or a certain sort of people don't feel that they can indeed trust that this government would look out for them.
Well, it would be a miracle if 100% of the people trust you implicitly. It will be nothing short of miracle. You will always find dissent in any country, in any society. In fact, the country where you don't find dissent, suspect that country. So it is not strange that there will be dissent from some areas. It is only natural. But this government is going to do all that is fair and just to every segment of the country, every part of the country. The president wants a national mandate, and he's going to exercise that mandate nationally.
All right.
Not shortchanging any part of the country.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to us, we are live here on 99.3 Nigeria Info for the August gathering. 22 minutes gone past the 8 o'clock hour this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 26th of August, 2015. On the line with us, we have Mr. Femi Adesina, who's the special advisor to the president on media and publicity. And we've started off the discussion. Now you can join us via Twitter. All right, just tweet with the hashtag TAG2015. That's hashtag TAG2015. If you have questions for Mr. Femi Adesina, you can tweet those questions at us and we'll see them here in the studio. You can also watch the live YouTube stream, but you'd have to go on our Twitter account at Nigeria Info FM. We've shared the link so you can see us in the studio and watch live. So if you want to see what's going on, just go on YouTube. But the link is via our Twitter account at Nigeria Info FM, and you can also listen online, and that's www.nigeriainfo.fm. All right, let's get on with it. Now, over the last days, as you've said, a number of things have happened. One of the first things the president did was have a meeting with the former service chiefs before they were replaced, have the military base relocated to Maiduguri. So we saw that as one of his first few moves. We've seen a number of probes, and we've seen a number of things happen. But talking security, we woke up this morning to the sad news of another attack in Damaturu, and you said that Boko Haram have been significantly pushed back, so they're just throwing bombs haphazardly, not engaging the military or trying to take territory. But is there a holistic security plan? Is there a plan that is going to take into cognizance all forms of counter-terror initiatives beyond just a military operation to push Boko Haram back?
Yes, obviously. Those who man our security operators are professionals. You can be sure they have that holistic plan. And you also know that security is not something you stay on the rooftops and you begin to proclaim. You need to keep a lot of things close to your chest. So naturally, it's not something they would discuss. But in terms of do they have that plan, you can be sure they have. Don't forget that. Let me illustrate with this. Originally, in July, when the president was in the United States of America, he was asked when he thinks Boko Haram will be totally contained. And he said in 18 months that could happen. But then, earlier this month, when he visited Benin Republic, he said by December, he was sure the insurgency would be over. What made him change his mind from a timeline of 18 months to 4 months? You know that he must know what we don't know. He is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He must have access to all these plans, these security plans, and he knows that they will deliver by that time. So the timeline also changed.
All right, now we have Chris Ngodo in the studio, and in the only that I introduced earlier. Chris is someone who is very passionate about the counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism war, and we've spoken on a number of occasions here on the panel on this issue. Chris, I remember that a few weeks ago you talked about this holistic counter-terrorism plan that needs to have the military bit as a component, and you talked about some other elements that need to be put in place. You want to do a quick recap?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Adesina. What I had said at the time was that the military approach to the insurgency is simply one component. You have to fight with extremism at an ideological level. You have to fight the socioeconomic conditions that make radicalization on this scale possible. And what we see so far, and which we have seen over the years, is a prioritization, almost an exaggeration of the military component at the expense of other areas of counterinsurgency, such as those which I have mentioned. And the fact that terrorism in itself is a type of crime really that is dealt with through preemptive policing and intelligence gathering, largely. By the time you need to use the military as a first resort rather than a last resort, which is the case now, then you're already operating in the worst case scenario. So I am troubled by the militarization, the excessive militarization, as it were, of the counterinsurgency effort, the exaggeration of the military as the institution of first resort rather than the institution of last resort. And then I would take issue with the idea of winning. I would always like governments to be circumspect about using the term winning. We are winning the war on terror. I think that that is a statement that it can be prone to a lot of distortion. In the first 60 days of this new administration, bombings claimed over 500 lives. We are dealing with a casualty rate that was actually higher than anything we've seen in recent times. Now, that is not even to say that it is the fault of the administration. I'm trying to ask, what I'm asking is, what does winning mean? At what point do we say that we are winning? What does it mean to really win in war?
Mr. Penadisha, I want you to respond to this, especially on the issue of setting timelines. Now, we saw the former government, some people have said, make a mistake by saying, oh, by this time we would have won the war against terror, by this time we would have defeated the terrorists. But those timelines weren't actually ever met. So with this December sort of like timeline that has been set, and considering some of the other things Chris has said, is there a need for this narrative to be altered or maybe changed?
Thank you. Chris spoke about using the military as first option. That's not quite true. He will recall that when the insurgency started in that was in 2009 when he got to his peak. He started with the police being used, and it was when it got out of hand that the military was brought in, and it was the military that arrested Mohammed Yusuf, the leader and founder of Boko Haram. And what did they do? They handed him over to the police because it was a civil action, it was a police action which got out of hand, and the military was just called in. And somehow, strangely, that man died in police custody. So he would not be correct to say the military was brought in as first option. No, it was the police that started it. The military was brought in as a latter option. Now, in terms of setting deadlines, you would have heard or read the former president, who is also a retired general, Olusegun Obasanjo. He said it is typical of the military to set deadlines and timelines. But even when the Civil War was fought, that they set a deadline of 6 months to end that Civil War. It lasted 30 months eventually. They said that deadlines helped the military.
Mr. Femi, thank you for raising this point, because this then highlights what is said in many quarters, that the fight against terror is non-conventional. I mean, you think about the Civil War, for instance, and people will tell you, well, that's conventional warfare. You know, but this terrorists, you know, are hiding the shadows. They're not coming out to you know, attack you, you know, forefront. And you know, it's very unconventional. It's not the sort of engagement that military are used to.
No, that is also not quite right, because we have twists and turns in this insurgency. There was a time that they were not hiding in the shadows, and they were seizing territory and planting their flags there, and actually beginning to administer those territories. So they had not always been in the shadows. There was a time they came out and they seized territories, and they were administering those territories. So that is not also quite correct. Therefore, you cannot say it is not a conventional warfare in all its theaters and phases. There was a time it became conventional, that they will engage the military in pitched battles and they will split territories. You will see that has stopped now.
Okay.
It has become an asymmetric war in which they now strike through bombs here and there. So the insurgency has had different phases. We can't just make a sweeping generalization.
Let me get Ndidi Onwuneli on now. Socioeconomic conditions. I mean, we had the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in town. I think he left just yesterday, and you know, he talked about some of the things that need to be put in place to address this terrorism issue at the root. And it's again socioeconomic conditions in the Northeast, it's the poverty of the people, the fact that there isn't as much governance presence as there should be. You're someone who is, you know, a social entrepreneur who knows about how to, you know, give people what they need for a better life. How do you see that this government can address the socioeconomic conditions that can tackle terrorism?
Well, I think the root cause of the insurgency is the poverty, and the intense poverty in the Northeast. And the poverty, the limited educational opportunities, limited access to jobs and entrepreneurship. And unless we tackle this at the root, we will continue to have a cycle of violence and insurgency in the Northeast. As I think about the Northeast and what it brings to Nigeria, agriculture is really the bedrock of the population there. And sadly, we have neglected the agriculture sector for a really long time in Nigeria. We need to revive that sector. Even looking over the last few months at the confusion that has occurred in Nigeria, our farmers have not planted in the north, and sadly the rains have been relatively poor, and so what we're even expecting is a really low yield this year. What is the government doing to ensure that we feed our people.
I think that's a
So-
direct question we can push to Mr. Femi Additional right now. Poverty, education, limited access to jobs, entrepreneurship, agriculture. More than 70% of our population is engaged in one form of agriculture or the other. And India has just said the late rains, some of the issues, and it's happening right there in the northeast where this terrorism is on the high. So what is the government doing? Just could you just respond to that question?
Yes, like I said at the beginning, these are early days in the life of the administration. This is an administration that Nigerians have elected for 4 years. This is just going to be the third month, and those first 3 months have been spent cleaning up and laying a fresh foundation. Government will be fully formed in September, as the president has promised, and he will keep that promise. And it is then that things will begin to unfold. So I think it may be premature to begin to ask this kind of question. When that government is formed and policies are unfolded and they have been implementing it for a while, then this kind of question can come up.
Mr. Femi Additional, we're not going to let you go on this. We need some form of. I mean, is this because the president hasn't put in a cabinet? Because that's a major question that we have for you today. We've seen many probes, we've seen many things happen. Some of the things that you've highlighted, but these are immediate things, immediate concerns. If the farmers haven't started planting, if they're affected by certain issues, then they need to be addressed. So I'm going to push it to you again.
Well, you know that the planting season has all actually ended. It has ended. A new one will come at the turn of the year. So there is not much difference that can come now because the government came in the middle of the season. That season has ended now. Planting will now start till the turn of the year. So there's not much you can say in that area.
Okay. Chris, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I wanted to go back a bit because I did ask about the definition of winning. What does it mean to win the war on counter?
To come to that, indeed, it seems like you still want to stay on this.
I wanted to push on this issue of malnutrition. Nigeria has one of the highest rates of malnutrition in the world. 37% of our children are stunted. In the Northeast, it's up to 60%, and it's killing 1 out of every 5 children. So you can't say the planting season is over. We'll have to wait for the next one. What are we going to do to ensure that we feed the children? I understand the IDP camps have been getting some support, but clearly it's not enough. And if our children are not dying from bombs, they're going to be dying of malnutrition. So there's actually a crisis. What can we do about it? And what is the government thinking about this issue?
Okay. You want me to respond to that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. The UN Secretary General was here. He just left on Monday night. One of the assurances he gave was that the UN was going to also assist Nigeria to resettle the IDPs, 1.5 million of them within the country alone. The president has always said it, that it's a priority of the government to resettle the IDPs. The first thing is guarantee peace in their locale so that they can return to their homes. And don't forget, when he visited the United States, there was a meeting with the World Bank delegation where the World Bank promised the sum of $2.1 billion as a soft loan at very, very, very mild rates. I think in the first 10 years, they would not charge any rate, and for the next 30 years, they would charge less than capital market rate. And the president has said that the bulk of that money will be used to resettle the IDPs when eventually that money comes in. So there's a lot that the government is doing. But like I have told you, it takes a while for these things to mature.
Chris,
mature question.
Well, I keep going back to this issue because this idea of winning, if you lose 500 people in the first 2 months, you can't say we are winning. It would be more prudent to use something a bit more measured, like saying we are fighting, but I think it's a bit premature to say that we are winning. The second thing is that this insurgency has always had 2 dimensions. You have the more orthodox terrorism campaign, which is the bombing of public places, and you had, for a brief spell, for just under a year, a phase in which this group actually began to seize territory, more, I suspect, from the weakness of the Nigerian state than from any actual strength of the group itself. It was able to seize territory because of the vacuum in terms of our defense capacities that allowed those things to happen. Now, what has happened is that this group has simply gone back to its specialty, which is orthodox terrorism and the bombing of public places. And I've always argued that the bombing of public places is not going to be resolved by the military, by conventional military force. You need preemptive policing, you need intelligence gathering, and a lot of the emphasis has been on the military solution to this. Now, what is this government doing in terms of enhancing the policing and the intelligence gathering dimensions of the counter-insurgency campaign? Secondly, the fact that the military itself is brought into a situation of internal security is the worst case scenario already manifest. And it always happens because of a prior failure of police and intelligence services. I'm talking here of the Department of State Security, the National Intelligence Agency, and these bodies that are paid to secure the country, to secure the citizens, so that you don't have to bring the military into an internal security situation. Now, what is this government doing to hold these agencies to account? Those are the two questions I would ask.
Thank you. You know, I said at the beginning that security is not something you go on the rooftop to proclaim. We know that these agencies are there, they have been reinvigorated. There were changes. The State Security Service has a new DG, and you know what happened in the military, the service chiefs, a new chief of defense staff, and all that. They will have policies, they will have approaches that they have articulated. But you don't go, when you are fighting a war, you don't go disclosing your strategy.
Okay, Mr.
Let me anchor this.
Okay.
You don't go disclosing your strategies on the pages of newspaper or proclaiming it from the rooftops. Then where's the element of surprise? And then talking of winning is just a question of semantics. It is those who feel it that know it. Those who are in the Northeast, who have lost relations, who have scattered families, are living in different parts of the day. The father doesn't know where the wife is or where the children are. They want to see this war won. So winning or not winning becomes just a question of semantics. All we want is let this be brought to a conclusive end and let peace return to Nigeria.
Fantastic.
And that is what this government is resolved to achieve.
Okay, I think we'll still let you go on this, Mr. Femi Adesina, but one other thought has to do with the concern about building institutions. I don't know if Nigerians want the security plan or blueprint published on the front pages of newspapers. I don't think it would be wise for any government to do that. No. But I think the issue here is institutions. What we've seen over the last few years is strong personalities. Personalities are elevated. The focus seems to be, there's a new DG or a new person in charge of the organization. Even in the fight against corruption, people look at the head of the EFCC, and it's usually a personality-centered situation. Now, what Nigerians, I believe, want to see, and I think, if I can speak for Chris, the concern here is how can we be sure that these institutions are being strengthened? The police, for instance, and you rightly said earlier, there's a recruitment drive. But beyond a recruitment drive, are there other indications or other things that are happening that can indicate to us that these institutions are being strengthened? I think if Nigerians see that or know that there's a plan to strengthen these institutions, we'll be a bit satisfied.
Thank you. Yeah. You know there has been this talk of whether Africa needs strong men or strong institutions, as Obama said when he came to Ghana some years back. For me, the balanced position is that you do need strong people to build strong institutions. When you talk of strong men, you are not talking of strong men in the terms of tyranny. There are people that will call strong men who are tyrants. No. But you need strong people, people of resolve, people of steel, who still, if you like, benevolent dictators, who can build you strong institutions. It has happened. The Asian Tigers, you saw people who were strong building those countries. Nigeria also needs people to build her institutions. They don't have to be strong men, but they have to be strong people. institutions will not emerge, will not be strengthened unless you have strong people heading them. And you at the beginning you spoke about a new sheriff being in town. You will see what is happening with power. You will see what is happening with refineries. It's not as if this government has implemented new things that have yielded quickly. No, the situation has just responded to the fact that a new sheriff is in town and is a strong man. And the institutions had better be strong under him, or he will shake up those institutions.
All right, we have Olawale Olale in the studio. I'm going to be introducing him in a short while. But Lagos, if you're listening, we're having the August gathering here on 99.3 Nigeria Info. And Mr. Femi Adesina is with us on the line. You've heard the voice of Chris Nwobo as well as Indidi Onwuneli. Olawale Olale has joined us. He's the group politics editor at This Day newspapers. He's an indigene of Ogun State, a graduate of mass communication from the Moshood Abiola Polytechnic, former Ogun State Polytechnic in Abeokuta. He also holds a master's degree in communication studies from the Lagos State University, and he's been with This Day for upwards of 17 years, and he's now the group politics editor. Good morning to you, Mr. Olale, and you're welcome to the August gathering.
Good morning, Sharon.
Good to have you today.
Same here.
All right.
For calling it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, Lagos traffic. We know how it is. Now, on Twitter, the hashtag TAG 2015 is trending. We're the number one trend right now as we speak. Hashtag TAG 2015. A lot of Nigerians are sending in their questions, and I'm going to take a few for you, Mr. Femi. Junaid Dotu says, as much as I agree with Mr. Femi on tackling terrorism, my concern is this teenage suicide bombers. This Damaturu situation, it's been reported that it was a teenage female that detonated this bomb. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Adesina?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that person expressed this worry. I'm also worried, and I believe every sincere Nigerian is worried. And that shows you that this is not just only about armed encounters. It's not just about using military might. You will have to use every weapon of warfare. You use psychology, you use everything, because those young girls have been wrongly psychologized, and there must be a psychologizing of them to get out of that mindset where a youngster will be willing to go and detonate a bomb that will claim a life. So it is warfare that must go just beyond bearing arms. This was the counsel from President Obama to our president when he visited in Washington. He said it must go just beyond and a military thing. There must be socio-economic approach to what is
this re-psychologizing. I like the word you just created, Mr. Adesina. I want to believe that this tends to what Chris earlier was saying, and I remember, Chris, a few months ago on the show, on the panel, you said that it's also a propaganda machine. This terror group Boko Haram, it's from videos to in the style of ISIS, right? So how can we counter them on that level where moderate clerics, for instance, Islamic clerics, are given more voice and more influence, and maybe even work with government, so that in those communities there is a voice against the radical voice. So is the government thinking in this angle to engage even the Muslim community?
Very much so. Very much so. In fact, there is a unit in the Office of the National Security Advisor that is quietly working on that, working with clerics, working with traditional rulers to combat extremism. Is working quietly, working silently. That unit came to brief the president a couple of weeks ago. I was fortunate to be part of that, and I know that something is going on.
Before we get towards the end, I would like for us to touch on one of the major issues, and maybe I'll get Olawale to share his thoughts quickly on some of the things he's heard so far, and on this particular matter. Now, the president on his trip to the U.S. said, come September, I will put my cabinet in place. Now, a lot of Nigerians, Mr. Femi Adesina, I'm sure you're aware as well, I called him Baba Go Slow a few months ago. And some of the things that you said highlight the importance of having a cabinet, an economic team in place that, so that we have cabinet level discussions on some policies. I mean, the Treasury single account matter, for instance, some people have said, well, it has its positive sides, it has its negative side. If there was cabinet level debate on it, then maybe the government would have come up with a better position on some of these policies. So, Olawale, what is your thoughts quickly on some of the things that you've heard so far, and on this issue of the delay in appointing ministers? Before I get back to Mr. Additional.
Well, first, in terms of the debate on terrorism, well, much as I agree with Mr. Additional and a few of the facts raised, I also think Mr. Chris was quite right. Intelligence and being proactive these are two things that are very critical and are lacking in our policing approach. And except intelligence, I remember speaking with the president before the elections at an interview, and he was very emphatic about intelligence too. He was clear about that. He said that was what was missing, either in the military or even in the police. And if he was so sure of all of that, I don't know what they've been doing in terms of intelligence gathering. And well, like you said, semantics, winning and winning, but we know the government has been doing a lot in recent time in terms of containing the insurgency in the northeast parts of the country. But be that as it may, I want to believe, and I'm trusting because it is my prayer that we win the war ultimately. But however, in terms of the delay in the cabinet, I have a problem with that. A lot of people thought the government would hit the ground running, but that is not happening or hasn't happened. And the U.S. troop you just said referred to, I'm aware, one of the reasons we've not really had anything concrete out of that meeting was because they expected that the president would come with his team, and then, like you just said, cabinet to cabinet, discussion would have taken place, but that was not possible because the people he went with are not the people that would be representing the Nigerian people in his cabinet. So there wasn't much. So everything has been put on hold, supposedly, allegedly so, until this cabinet is put in place. But I have a problem with this delay because I think time is of essence, even in decision making, and that's a lot speaks to leadership for me. If I mentioned time is set to say 9, if it doesn't come in time, 100 is too bad.
Mr. Additional, what is your response on this?
Yeah, well, I think once we have a timeline, it's just a matter of waiting for that time to come. The president has said it will happen in December. In September. September has just
December, okay.
So, no.
Okay.
September is just by the corner, and that month has 30 days. So let's wait and see. But one thing we must not forget in terms of hitting the ground running, when you hit the ground and you landed in mud, how do you begin to run?
Mr. Additional, please allow me to interrupt you now. We need to go on a quick commercial break. This is what keeps the session running. All right. So allow us go on a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we need to talk about this mud that you guys saw on the ground when you hit the ground, because we've seen all kinds of probe committees shake up, and Nigerians are asking the question: for how long will this government probe, and can they probe and do the other things that are important for us as well? So just hold on to your line as we go on this quick commercial break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, still the August gathering. Yes, tweet with the hashtag TAG2015 with your questions. We have Indidi Wunili in the studio, MFR. We also have Chris Ngwodo as well as Olawale Olale here. I am Oluwaseun P. We'll take a break and be back.
This is Nigeria Info 99.3. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome back. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, 4 minutes to the top of the hour, 9 a.m. We've got Mr. Femi Adesina, who is the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, on the line with us here on 99.3 Nigeria Info, the August gathering. And this is a special one of a kind, first of its kind, radio colloquium to craft the people's position on national development post 2015. Now, national development, it's really about the quality of life of the people, access to healthcare, education. Some of the things we talked about, this improving the socioeconomic conditions of the nation, entrepreneurship, agriculture, food security. Well, Femi Adesina answering some hard questions this morning on what the government is doing to ensure that it can deliver on true development to the people beyond, just the other things. Now, Mr. Femi Adesina, you're very welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, before we went on the break, we talked about this mud or this rot that has been allegedly taking you guys a lot of time really to clean up before you guys get to work. Now, Nigerians are saying it's one thing to spring clean, it's one thing to sweep the floor and clean the house, air the room, ensure that all the rot and dirt there is taken out before you move your new furniture in or start to live in that house. But if you're going to live in the house, if you paid 1 year rent for the house and you spend 7 months doing spring cleaning, then what is the point? That is what some people are saying right now. How would you respond?
Okay. Well, that analogy of one year rent will not be quite opposite, because this is a 48-month administration. 48 months. And it's just about spending 3 months cleaning. So if you have 45 months to get the job done, so that one of 1 year may not be quite relevant. But let me tell you, those who talk about hitting the ground running, one they will recall that I had engaged with him over a piece he did in this day. When I read it, I called him up and we discussed it.
You can tell us what that piece is about, but go on.
Well, when you land, and you land in mud, deep, and you want to start running immediately, what happens? You sink deeper. You sink deeper into that morass. So if you land in mud like that, what do? You find a way to step out gingerly, clear that mud, and then you can proceed on firm ground. That is what this administration is doing. Because the president came to office and he said it, that he didn't know that the level of rot was that terrible. In fact, he said at every turn he sees 3 trails of stolen money. Now, what does a responsible administration do? Without probing, the media likes the word probing. This government has never said it is probing, but it is investigating some leads. When you see leads, you see trails that are fresh. You follow those trails. That's what the administration is doing. And the president has said the money stolen, billions of dollars.
Allow me to interject, Mr. Fendro. Just allow me to interject here. Now, again, back to the issue of building institutions. Some people have said, how broad can the president spread himself? He might stretch himself thin, because what we hear on the headlines is Buhari, sets up committee to probe ABC. Some are saying, why not build these institutions, empower the right people that can do this job, so the president himself doesn't have to, so it doesn't seem like he's the one probing, he's the one going after people. They believe that he should focus on some other fundamental development-esque issues, and then leave the EFCC, ICPC, give them the funding, empower the right people to do that job, so that he distances himself from the I probe this, I probe that.
Now, if you want to build an edifice on a foundation of rocks, you can only build for some time, and then that edifice will come crumbling. So why don't you take some time and build a solid foundation so that your edifice can be enduring? That is what the president is doing. If he came in and he set up immediately and they continue to build on the rock that they made, no enduring change will come to this country. Don't forget that the party came to power on the wings of change. That change must be evident. Otherwise, in 4 years, people will say it probably just change.
See, this change that you just said now just sparked off many things inside of me. I wish we really had the time. I know that you have to go soon, but Idemudia Omoifo on Twitter says, how will the government handle our dwindling economic fortunes, capital market losses, drop in oil price, drop in the value of the naira? And then right after this, we need to get to this change issue, and I'll probably get Olawale on this as well. Looking at the politics side of it, a lot of interesting things have been happening on the political scene. Femi Adesina, we'd love to get your thoughts on some of those, particularly the fact that many people, who some would say were part of those who brought in the mud that you talked about, have now left the umbrella and are holding broom. So, and are trying to evade some of these, issues that will come with sweeping away the mud. But let's address this question on Twitter first.
Okay, the question again.
How does this government intend to handle the dwindling economic fortunes, the capital market losses? So now down to the economy.
Okay, yes, down to the economy. I'll just tell that person to also just temporize and wait till an economic team is set up, which is just a matter of days. An economic team will be set up. It will be made of the brightest and best that Nigeria can boast of, and I tell you, in a short while, we'll begin to see the result of it. It's not going to be magic. It's not going to be like they will wave a wand and new things will happen. But they will tackle it.
Abidakun Felix on Twitter is saying, what is the position of this government on fuel subsidy?
Yeah. If that person checks the paper today, the president spoke about subsidy yesterday. What he asked when the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission came to briefing, he asked the chairman, president, he said, brief me about what this thing called subsidy. Because he went back in time and he referred to when he was oil minister and Nigeria was, they had 4 refineries. He signed the commissioning of 2 of those refineries himself. And then to the time he was military head of state and we were exporting 100,000 barrels of refined petrol per day. And then he said, you ran down the system and you began to import petrol. And now you are talking of so-called subsidy and you want to pass the burden to ordinary Nigerians. Is it proper? That is the position of the president on it. Get the industry working again. Get our refineries working. And then try and beat local demand for refined petrol.
Okay.
Don't talk of subsidy again.
All right. Does Chris have a comment on this quickly?
Okay, I just want to say that we've not hit the ground running, and I take the point of the analogy about mud, landing in mud and all of that. But this is 3 months in, and the lack of a cabinet is a serious problem. It's more problematic than we take it to be. At a strategic level, like Olawale pointed out, we've not been able to. So the gains of the trip, such as that to the US, for example, could not be maximized because we had no cabinet level engagement with the United States government, and then there is no economic agenda.
Well, Chris, can we underestimate the sort of rot that is in place and the work that is needed for the right foundation to be set?
Even if you're talking of rot and you're talking of an anti-corruption campaign, you would expect. Now, I'm not even one of those that says you must appoint the entire cabinet at the same time. But surely, even in terms of what you're prioritizing, you must have strategic appointments that you want to make. So in terms of the anti-corruption campaign, where is the Attorney General, for example, that is going to guarantee institutional autonomy for the anti-corruption agencies? We're in the middle of an economic crisis. Dwindling oil revenues are the prospects we are facing. Next year's budget is going to be a budget of austerity. This is the time to begin to articulate that agenda.
The MTF, this is a September deadline, I believe, or is it December deadline for the MTF? And the Senate, it was in the headlines yesterday, the Senate expressing worry that might not be met since there's no Minister of Finance. So, Mr. Adesina, do you want to respond to some of these concerns?
Well, but there is I would like to say there is a timeline. When that timeline is there and that timeline is approaching, let's not dissipate energy on these things again. Let's just wait for that timeline.
Okay. Now there's a tweet, daily quotes, Slimmy quotes on Twitter. My goodness, it's all names. It's all right. I guess the mud is corruption. Why is the EFCC not acting on various petitions sent to them on some APC chieftains? So the question here, the concern here in this fight against corruption is that some don't believe it will be inclusive. They think, some people are hiding. Olawale, do you want to just make a quick comment on this before Ms. Additional responds?
Well, I don't particularly believe some people are hiding. And if indeed government is serious about corruption, I think government knows what to do.
Do you think, Mr. Additional, do you think that if some people within the camp of the ruling party are dealt with, who a lot of Nigerians believe are corrupt or think are corrupt, would you think that would be the greatest sign of this government's readiness to deal with corruption in whatever form it is?
Yes, but you don't, in the guise of fighting corruption, don't begin to hound people who don't have any prima facie cases, against them. The fact that there is a petition does not mean somebody is guilty. There must be a proven case, a case that can stand the rigor of trial. And that case is taken to court. When it's even taken to court, it does not mean that person is guilty until there is a pronouncement. So that issue for me is simply an issue of fairness, justice, and rule of law.
Fairness, justice, and rule of law. Do you want to react to the Attorney General question that Chris raised earlier?
Yes, Chef.
Well, for me, it's still the issue of timeline.
And Secretary, yeah.
Yes. And don't forget that while the Attorney General is not there, you have a Solicitor General and people in the Ministry of Justice that give advice on this thing. Yes, I agree, there must be an Attorney General and he will come. It's in a matter of days as September rolls in. But then it's not as if there is a vacuum. You have people who are playing the role. In every ministry, you have a permanent secretary who will be a professional who knows the ropes and they are manning those ministries. The president has always said what the minister should do, the permanent secretary should see himself doing those things while we are waiting the minister.
All right, we're still taking questions. The final set of questions, Ms. Additional has an appointment that he has pushed for. Yes, and we know you have to run. So
I'm already running late.
Yes, we know you have to run now, but the last set of questions. Now, you've said, and I want to ask if it's safe for us to go with the wait and see approach. So you're saying by September, the moment the cabinet is appointed, some of these questions that relate to development will be answered. Is it safe to have that conclusion?
Surely, it's a safe conclusion.
Okay, now on Twitter, now the rhetoric now is you want to evade probes, just switch camps, PD to APC. Tolu AD sent that in. We also have some question about Nigeria being in the middle of a serious economic crisis and what needs to be done to address that. Electricity improving as we say, as if it shouldn't have passed this level. Our generation is still very low. Is there a thought on the power reform? Many people have said that if there's anything that needs to be done that can drastically improve the economy, is to address the power sector.
Yes, the power sector, currently we have 4,600 megawatts, which is an all-time high. Since 2012, Nigeria have not reached that level. And according to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Power, when he came to brief the president about 2 weeks ago, easily Nigeria can now begin to generate 5,500 megawatts before the end of this year if it has the requisite infrastructure. So you see that a lot of things have decayed in Nigeria. It's a rebuilding, and rebuilding is a process. And you have a president who is determined to rebuild. Let us allow him to follow that process, and we will see the outcome.
All right.
So we appreciate all you said about the plans for addressing the insurgency, but it's been 500 days since our girls were kidnapped. And we haven't heard the government come out explicitly and state what its plans are to reassure us that those girls will be returned to their homes.
No. I am sure you have heard. Maybe you don't recall. Because the president has even gone to the extent of saying, yes, he is ready to negotiate with genuine leaders of Boko Haram if it will mean freedom for the children there. He has said that.
Mr. Additional, you see, we would have let you go, but as you mentioned that word negotiation, we might need a minute to just look at it quickly. Chris, what is your thought? Negotiating with these terrorists.
In general, I'm opposed to negotiating with terrorists. But at this point, you have to ascertain, there's no real certainty about how many of those girls are alive. I've been very disturbed by the sudden use of teenage girls in suicide bombings. Are we looking at a hostage situation where these girls are being forced? In the same way that Sierra Leonean rebels forced child fighters or child warriors into their ranks, are we looking at that sort of situation? What is the trade-off exactly? That's very important. What is the trade-off? What are you willing to give in exchange for those girls? Because we have to decide that there are certain lines, transactional costs that we are not going to take on. So I'm in general, I'm opposed to the idea of negotiating. I'm willing to tolerate it when it comes to these girls. But how many girls at this point are we even talking about? So those are the specifics. This is not one of those things that I would like us to do in a slapdash generic fashion. We have to be careful about what it is exactly we are trying to get.
Mr. Femi Additional, we'd love for you to respond to this and give us a closing remark. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, I wish Chris had the answer to that question. How many of the girls are alive? I wish he could tell us. The president has said there is no information on these girls. And don't forget, even in his trip to the U.S., what did he ask the U.S. for? He asked for equipment. He also asked for intelligence. Because nobody knows where these girls are. Nobody knows how many of them are still alive. But the president has said, if the genuine leaders of Boko Haram come forward and they want to negotiate, release some of our members in detention, we will release these girls, the president said he will do it. But I just wish Chris would answer that question. So how many of these girls...
But Mr. Femi Additional, you've said that the president is looking to improve intelligence. So I think is the answer to the question then, as intelligence is improved, we could get the answer to this question, which is identify where these girls are, if we still have some of them alive, and then a grand military operation to rescue them.
Look, that will be very costly. It will, it will be very costly. But the first step is identifying where they've been kept, and then determining how many of them are still alive. And after that, the best option.
Okay. All right. So, do you want to give us a closing remark? It's been such a delight to have you on the show, and we wish we had more time to continue to drill you because, trust us, we have many questions. People are asking about the Confab report, asking about education, asking about many things. But I want to believe this is a first in many engagements that we would have with you. So, give us a closing remark.
I promise that I have the time. I'll make myself available for this kind of engagement.
Thank you so much.
What I would just like to say is that Nigerians have elected a man who has come to serve them. Nothing else. He has come to serve them, to leave his footprints on the sands of time. And if only...
Oh my goodness, the phone line cut right at the very end. Well, we're going to see if we can reconnect with him quickly just so that he finishes his thought. Femi Additional, the special advisor to the president on media and publicity. You're still listening to the August Gathering on 99.3 Nigeria Info. 15 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. Right after we have a conclusion, we'll go on a break and come back. Mr. Additional, are you back?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I just was saying that at the end of the day, Nigerians will be proud that they elected this president, and they will be proud of their country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. And you too.
All right, Lagos, Nigeria, the world. If you're listening, still the August Gathering today, the 26th of August, 2015, and we're saying our bye-byes to Mr. Femi Additional. But the August Gathering is not over at all. We're still here. We're going to tear apart some of the things that have been said so far and continue the discussion on post-2015 national development. I'm Oluwaseun P on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM. Keep those tweets coming in. You can also tweet at the AUG gathering for the August gathering today. Check out the website www.theaugustgathering.com for information on some of our panelists that we have here in the studio. We're also delighted to have Professor James Sayo of the School of Media and Communications at the Pan Atlantic University here with us in the studio. He's listening keenly and is taking notes on everything that is being said. At the end of this colloquium, he'll be doing an executive summary, and we'll be telling you some more about that at that point. Send those tweets in, the questions, your contributions with the hashtag TAG2015. We'll go on a break and we'll be back.
This is Nigeria Info 99.3. Good morning, Nigeria. This is Nigeria Info 99.3. Good morning, Nigeria. From your number one talk, news,
news and sports station. This is Morning Crossfire.
The Morning Crossfire.
With Ayo, Onome, and Oluwaseun.
The Morning Crossfire on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. Once you hear Ray Barretto's Latin jazz interpretation of the song What's Going On, you know it's a Wednesday, you know it's the time for the panel. Today is a special edition that we've tagged and themed the August Gathering. I'm Oluwaseun P, and you're very welcome. 22 minutes gone past the 9 o'clock hour. I can't believe we have just 28 minutes left. It's been such a great time, and I still have my astute guest panelists in the studio. So delighted to have them. We have Ndidi Wuneli in the studio, and apparently I've been mispronouncing her name, but I've gotten the right one now. By the way, we had a debate over the correct pronunciation of your name in the studio a few weeks ago, and all of us missed it because some people were saying it's Nweli, Onwuneli. I said it's Onwuneli, and now we know it's Wuneli. Okay, where are you from though?
Anambra State.
Oh, okay.
It just means you need more diversity in your studio.
Well, yes, we do. Well, talking diversity, and my mom is actually from Delta State, so and I say that a lot. My dad is from Oyo State, and I was born in Kano. So
okay.
yeah,
so
kind of like so I always claim that I know how to pronounce Igbo names, but I missed yours. All right, we also have Olawale Olale in the studio, and Olawale, you haven't still told us what that article was about that Femi Adesina called you on. Can you please tell us now?
I think it was titled The Joke Called Change.
The Joke Called Change. Now you try, you get liver.
And then it started by sending me a text message to say, I just read your article. Okay. Oh. So I called him back and I said, look, my boss, I'm helping you to do your job. We need to push this man. He's not doing anything. Expectations were high before he got to office, and now everything is just slow, and then on the crest of planning for how long are you going to plan for? And like I said earlier, I told him, I said, for me, time is of essence in whatever you're doing. If you're planning and there is no timeline, like he said, then what's the essence of the whole planning? And then he said, okay. I said, okay, for now, I'll pipe low for you, but I'll keep eye on what you guys are doing.
Okay, all right. Chris Ugbodo is also in the studio, and Chris, you're taking Femi Adesina on some of the counter-terrorism issues there. Chris, it's good to have you again. You're very welcome to the August Gathering.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we also have Professor James Sayo observing silently for now. You'll be hearing from him in a short while during an executive summary. Guys, there's so little time, we need to dive right into it. We're looking at national development, and indeed, you so brilliantly highlighted some of the elements of this when you made your opening address. You talked about poverty, education, limited access to jobs, entrepreneurship, agriculture. You even talked about the IDPs and the malnutrition problem that we have. Now look at the Human Development Index, for instance. You know, we look at Nigeria's HDI value, you know, and there have been all kinds of reports. The 2013 report, I believe, ranked Nigeria quite low, 157 or so. I need to get the exact number and bring it to you in a short while. 152 as of 2013 on this list, and it's a list of about 183 countries not doing very well. Now, the Human Development Index looks at, very simply, quality of life. You know, some of the things that you've highlighted already. You know, so how, post 2015, do you see that we can really move Nigeria forward?
Well, I would say that we have to prioritize a few interventions: education, health, and entrepreneurship in a few key sectors, especially agriculture, construction, because of the housing challenge, and some of our growth sectors such as entertainment and the creative arts. Nigeria has some phenomenal people in this country, but if we're not educated, we're really useless. And I don't just mean formal education, I mean skills as well. So if I was to have the opportunity, or if I had the opportunity to advise the presidency, I would say really look at the education system. We have not had a strong minister of education in a long time. How would you prioritize education? Primary education needs to be fixed. And so our teacher training has to be revamped. Half of our children are in what we call private schools. Now, they're not actually very good schools at all because our accreditation systems are extremely weak. When you have a school that's just a shed with one or two people in there who are equivalent, who have very limited education, then you see the results we keep on having. What was the recent JAMB failure rate? Astronomical. So we need a skilled workforce. We need our vocational skills training systems revamped. And the federal level has to set the policies and the states have to implement. But the federal level has to work effectively to address the policy issue as well as the implementation issue. The second piece is around entrepreneurship. 97% of our businesses are micro and small businesses, and they are struggling to survive. We need an enabling environment, a policy environment that works for them. We need support for entrepreneurs. I am an entrepreneur myself, and I can tell you that if I wasn't called by God to be in the manufacturing sector, I wouldn't do it. It's extremely difficult, and energy is the least of my worries on a daily basis.
What is your most...
The challenge that entrepreneurs face, human capacity, is if you ask any entrepreneur in Nigeria, their number one complaint is finding good people. And this comes back to education. It affects every single sector. The second thing that we face is the whole supply chain that does not work because it's fragmented, it's broken. And that's why in agriculture, especially, you need a supply chain strategy and you need streamlined policies that are consistent. If you have a Ministry of Agriculture that's promoting rice or promoting maize, and you have a Ministry of Trade that is allowing you to import maize and import rice, you cannot compete. Do you know that you can import maize into Nigeria at 32 naira per kg when the average farmer is selling at 60 naira per kg? How can they compete? So, I mean, our policies need to be consistent across the board. So you need cross-sector collaboration. Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Agriculture should work together to develop policies, and the presidency has to hold them accountable for this collaborative policy development and monitoring, because otherwise you're going to be working against each other consistently.
In the past, has there been this collaborative policy direction to your satisfaction?
I have not seen it work effectively. We've had superstars in different ministries, but the ability to work together has limited us and actually worked against us. And you see that in every single sector of the economy, not just in agriculture, but that's the one I'm most familiar with. And then this issue of nutrition I brought up cannot be underemphasized. I wasn't just focusing on IDP camps. We have widespread malnutrition in homes all over northern Nigeria. And we have hidden hunger in urban centers. So when 1 out of every 5 Nigerian children is dying because of malnutrition, you know that it's an urgent issue. So we have to ensure that we have food and nutritious food for our people and that it's affordable. If the food in Nigerian households spend about 50% of household income on food. Contrast that with the United States where they spend about 6 or 7%, but contrast it with Brazil where they spend 25%, or Cameroon where they spend 30%. So cost of food is too high, and analysts are saying it's going to be higher in 2016 because of the weather patterns and the limited investment in agriculture in the last few months. So we really have to prioritize education. We have to prioritize health. We have to prioritize agriculture and policies for SMEs to thrive.
No, and it is so brilliantly listed. You kind of like set the agenda for the next round of talk. Let's start off with education. I spoke with Professor Sayo yesterday, and he touched on the issue of budgets. What is set aside? What should be set aside for spending in education? We've never hit the mark. And as you talk agriculture, I remember the Maputo Declaration as well, where governments agreed at 10%. Yeah. We've never done 5% of our budget, for agriculture. And now Femi Adesina said we should wait for the appointment, and the budget, etc. But Chris, taking you again on this education issue, what is your assessment of what needs to be done?
First, I agree completely with what Ndidi has said. Let me point out too that there is a structural problem here. The crisis area of Nigerian education is not, as is often thought, universities. It's actually basic education. In the last 15-20 years, we've recorded failure rates of 70% in WAEC exams, NECO exams. That's not a university problem. That's a basic education problem. And the problem is that this basic education is actually the purview of state governments and local governments, not federal governments. Now, the federal government had an intervention program called Universal Basic Education Commission. It was founded by the Obasanjo administration. By its very nature, it was meant to be a short to medium-term intervention, but it has become an institution existing for itself, not even for its purpose now. So how do you incentivize investment in basic education by state governments? And so I think that we're in a unique economic situation now, because you have states asking for federal funds to be bailed out, with federal funds. I would be looking at a situation where the federal government should tie the disbursement of funds to states to specific benchmark deliverables, such as education. How do you compel states? Because this is not a federal problem. Let us be fair here. You can't blame President Buhari because somebody in Abakaliki isn't going to school. It's just not possible. So we need to begin to scrutinize the states. But what I see that the federal government can do is to compel states to deliver certain benchmarks, as it were, in terms of
the budgetary element to this. Does this affect what the states can do?
A bit, but it's not about budgeting. It's about priority. It's about prioritizing education. I'll give you an example. Akwa Ibom has traditionally had a problem of school enrollment. So it gave birth to the stereotype of Ibibios as the perennial houseboys. I'm sure you remember from growing up, Akpan or Basi, the houseboy in any Nigerian drama, But the last two administrations, particularly the last one, I think Governor Akpabio, went all out to force school enrollment, virtually criminalized not sending children to school. It became a big deal, and that turned the tide in Akwa Ibom. Now, I cite that problem because you could make it's analogous to the problem of Almajiri children, out of school children in northern Nigeria. Now, what you want to see is equivalent commitment in that sense, but you don't have it. So you may have a state government, for example, that chooses to spend 180 million on renovating government house,
on boreholes, on personal websites,
or 2 billion on Salah gifts, for example. Now, these are criminal expenditures.
Criminal, really?
When you put it in the context of the scale of human need that we are talking about. So you also have a deficit of manpower in terms of teaching. If you have, let us say, 10 million out of school children, the other question is, do you even have the teachers that will teach 10 million out of school children? So again, investment in teacher training becomes relevant. And I would support a situation where the NYSC is streamlined. I don't think we need to use the NYSC as a federal job placement agency. There's no point going to the NYSC to wind up serving in a bank. I think the NYSC should be streamlined to two critical areas: access to basic education, so we're talking about teachers, and then access to primary health care, so we're talking about medical practitioners willing to serve
the third one on the agriculture issue, because some people have said that. Now, before I get to Wale, someone just tweeted AfriDevInfo on Twitter with the hashtag 2015, and the tweet says, Damaturu Yobe State with 83% male and 85% female have no education, is vulnerable to extremism. And there's a map of Nigeria with some of the northern states, and then it talks about the estimated male population and the percentage of the population that is without education. I'll quickly run through it. Yobe State, for instance, 83.3% male, no education. Estimated male population is about 1.4 million. In Borno State, 63.6% males with no education. Estimated male population is about 2.6 million. In Bauchi, it's not very different, 51.5%, no education, with a male population of about 2.8 million. So you're saying in all of these states, you have over 1 million uneducated people who are possibly living under the poverty line. who are easy targets of this radicalists, and so this brings in the dimension of terrorism that we talked about earlier. There needs to be a state of emergency as we talk education. Wale?
I agree. Totally, completely. Indeed, he has been able to identify education as a problem. Then he's been able to set the answers for it, which means prioritizing, which I agree completely. Although I have a bit of problem with that figures, I don't know how correct they are, but if they are, then it's worrisome. Absolutely, it is worrisome. Development is actually a complex thing, but you can't do it, you can't tackle it in isolation of the political dynamics. And that is where, for me, leadership comes in. You know, leadership, knowing what should be done at what, you know, what time and all that, prioritizing actually. And where you have some ridiculous amount being allocated for education, and then you have so much being given to pilgrimages and all of that, then it means we don't even know.
Talking about ridiculous amounts, and I like the fact that you're the group politics editor at these days, so you handle these issues. I mean, the man Fashola is being, he's under the spotlight right now. He's not been accused of anything. He's not been charged to court. So as it said, he's innocent until proven guilty. But looking at the figures, and people have said, let's move away from highlighting his role, because he was just one person in the government. There was the role of the State House of Assembly in approving some of these contracts, the procurement board and other people. So it was the Lagos State government that approved or spent this money on some of these contracts. Now, someone yesterday was telling me, look at LASU, for instance, on one issue after the other, payment of salaries to teachers and all of that. Look at the doctors, and we all know what happened between the Lagos State government and the doctors. Now, you then see that 130 something million naira was spent building 2 boreholes. How do you reconcile that? And this is someone who set the example, in quote, for leadership and for quality of delivery. So if some people are saying, if Fashola could do this, if a Fashola-led government could do this, then think about what the others did.
I'm aware. I don't know how far that is true. That spending thing has been taken off the Lagos thing. So whatever that is, that tells you about some kind of field politics probably going on in the corridors part there. And I think a lot that has been said about Fashola. I didn't work with Fashola, but what I know from my standpoint as a political editor is that it is more of politics than administration, as it were. And they have what they have in terms of their instant problems that I've been trying to cover up in terms of that. I'll take, for instance, the Falomo
shopping.
That was what government said was that he gave up that place for 50 million for 50 years. And then we later got to know that it was just a concession fee, and that there was 35% and then 65% profit sharing thing. Government wasn't bringing any money, nothing. An individual is going to do all of that, source money from the bank, build it, and then after a while, it's going to be government's property and all of that. And then you didn't talk about all of that. All you came out to say was that it was given away for 50 million for 50 years. So you can see politics. I'm not exonerating Fashola from any malfeasance, whatever, but what I'm saying is that it cannot be totally correct.
So India and Chris, Wale is saying, and allow me, tell me if this is right to say this, that the political dimension to all of this can either accelerate development or drastically slow it down if we have the wrong people making those decisions.
Absolutely.
And then, so the question to you, and then I'll come to India and Chris, is how do we get it right in that sense? Could it be the role of the people, civil society, and all the other, those who can demand accountability and ask questions that can then steer and guide political leaders to do what is right in terms of development?
Yes, everybody, the media, the civil society group, everybody is involved in all of this, because we must at every point in time keep governments on its toes. It doesn't have to be the State Assembly to put it in check. No, we all have
we elected those guys, the reps, to do that.
They're also human, and they are not infallible.
What are your thoughts, Cindy?
Well, I think that there's a place for leadership at the top, but I really think every governor and every local government chairman has to work with the civil society and the private sector in their states to implement change. And you see that everywhere, that change occurs. I mean, I'm writing a book on scaling social innovation, and I've been looking at what other countries are doing. And the US is one example. Obama, when he was appointed, created this Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation and launched something called challenge.gov, basically acknowledging that there are pockets of innovation that are working in civil society. There are schools that are run really well, that are not run by the government. Instead of the government trying to compete or reinvent the wheel, partner with those people to scale up what they do well. They're training, Corona, for example, has a great teacher training program. Instead of the government creating its own in Lagos State to upgrade the skills of teachers, partner with Corona. It's even more cost effective. Corona is a nonprofit. They can do it much cheaper than the government. What I see repeatedly is that our government tries to reinvent the wheel and compete. Private sector organizations all over Lagos have created vocational training centers that are working. Samsung has one, Ericsson has one, Nigerian Breweries has one. Partner with them to scale up the work they do. Let government stay in the business of setting policies and standards as opposed to implementing, offering, or delivering service. Otherwise, government will continue to fail, and there will be so much opportunity for corruption, which we see happening all the time.
So I've heard two words: creativity and innovation. That is needed for this to happen. Chris, just before the show, we talked about some of the numbers. Nigeria is growing at this certain rate. Nigeria. We've heard about breaks and brinks, and how Nigeria is doing so well in terms of economic growth. But when we look at the human development indexes, we look at the numbers and look at some of the issues that India has just raised, we're not doing as much as we can. So how can we bring creativity and innovation into turning around not just the numbers, but delivering on some of these issues, setting up the right policies and standards, engage with civil society and other people who are doing it right. But from your own perspective, how can we creatively and innovatively transform this?
Let me say again, I agree completely. And this is one that she's mentioned. Rather than this tortured debate about the virtues of the private sector versus the public sector, why not harness both? Why not creatively synergize both? So the government does not have to reinvent the wheel. I would look at a situation where if you have private sector companies already doing vocational institutes, which I think is a big part of what we have to do in terms of education, this glorification of university degrees in Nigeria is a cultural problem for us at this point. A lot of people don't have to go to university. What you want is for people to have skill, to be able to solve problems. Now, polytechnics really are meant to solve that problem. So if you think of polytechnics as vocational institutes, then I would rather bring Samsung on board to partner with certain polytechnics, to have this innovative partnership between both. You give them the platform, you have the structure, the government brings in something, but knowing that world-class expertise is available. So in a sense, government has the hardware in place. These private sector organizations bring in the software in terms of their expertise and training methodology and all of that. Now, when you talk of figures, we talk from time to time about growth rate, 7%, 6%, 7%, and that sounds decent until you measure it against all the other indices, population growth rate, unemployment rate, that sort of thing. So if you think of it as a sprint, for example, and all of these figures are athletes on each in their own lane, 7% looks fantastic until you see your population growth rate just galloping past, your unemployment rate galloping past. We are not growing fast enough to meet the demands for social and economic opportunity created by our population. So that is why we have to get innovative. So I would look at a situation where, again, we look at our entire system of education. We begin to prioritize actual skill transfer. We look at the structure of our economy. Nigeria's economy, yes, it is oil-driven, but oil is actually the secondary economic platform. Nigeria is still largely informal economy based, and much of that economy is not captured. If you were to do an analysis of your demand for goods and services, you will see that more than 70% is covered by the informal economy. Your mechanic is not captured in any economic data. Your technician is not captured. So the things that make your life tick are not really mapped by the economy as we understand it. So we need to look at the informal economy. That's what actually keeps Nigeria going, not oil. I know oil is important, but honestly, we've had states where civil servants have not been paid for 8 months. Where's the outrage? Where's the social discontent? Where's the rioting? I suggest that the informal economy serves as that critical buffer between the lack of payment and social discontent, which would have erupted. So we need to find a way, create credit facilities, where you have young people that decide we are going to open a barber shop instead of take to a life of crime. That's something you've saved the society from. How do you support those kind of people? You have organic entrepreneurial clusters all over the place. Computer Village is a fine example. Rather than destroying those kind of places in the name of gentrification or urban renewal, why not find a way to graft them into the formal economy, create structures?
The Bank of
around
Industry recently said that they've identified certain clusters and have certain funds that they've set aside to boost this MSME sector that you've highlighted and we talked about as well. And human capacity, as we talk education, it's so interlinked with developing the human capacity that is required to take up these jobs that will be created as we seek to spur the economy. So again, it's down to as you said, the MSMEs, right?
It is. So these are the kind. Look at the informal sector. It's an untapped gold mine. We need to look into that. So don't antagonize these people. Don't fight poverty by trying to wipe out poor people or trying to hide them. Get to those places where people are not depending on oil money and try and give them a leg up. Create infrastructure around these people. Find a way of channeling credits in their direction. Bring them into the sphere of formal economic activity. Don't kill them off with excessive taxation before they even get, into those places. A real business-friendly government would look kindly on this, because let me put it this way. My position is, if government doesn't create jobs, don't get in the way of people who are creating jobs for themselves. Get out of their way.
So, how do you situate these arguments in the context of scrapping Okada and the rest of them?
I find those kind of things problematic, because when you see economic activity is organic. Nigeria has no public transport system, none, not even in our big cities, Lagos or Abuja. So what happens is a need is there. These guys emerge to fill that need. But we have to point out that, in a sense, this is also a tragedy, because nobody at 8 or 6 is telling himself, I'm going to grow up to be an Okada rider. So this in itself is tragic. So I would prefer a situation where if you say you want to change the look of your city, then you create the alternative first before wiping out an entire job spectrum, because that is what it is, regardless of what we feel about the aesthetic appearances of having Okada people all over your cities. The fact of the matter is that this is about jobs, and it's an honest living. And if you wipe out that job spectrum, then you are going to pay the price in terms of increased crime. So there's a social cost for the things we do. It's not just about aesthetics. There's a social cost for the things that we do. And then lastly, I just want to make mention of it because you put up that graphic about the Northeast. The Northeast has the worst socioeconomic indices in Nigeria. So if you look back, you'll say retrospectively, if there was going to be anywhere that would breed an insurgency like this, it would be the Northeast. What I would say, what I suggest is, let us not pretend that governmental capacities are the same across the board in Nigeria. They are not. The Northeast should be placed under federal administration. It's not enough to declare a state of emergency. No, I am serious.
Okay.
The Northeast, those 3 states, should become federally administered territories for the next 10 years. The scale of the need in those places is unbelievable. When you talk about that,
you live in Jos Plateau State.
Yes,
are you saying this because of first-hand experience?
Yes. When you say these figures don't sound believable, let me give you one that will blow you. Lagos State has more primary schools and more secondary schools than the 19 states of northern Nigeria.
We don't have enough in Lagos.
And we don't have enough in Lagos. So in terms of this divide that we are talking about, that seems to be like a cultural divide or a religious divide or an ethnic divide, in many respects, it is actually an economic divide, a disparity in access to economic opportunity. So I say, place the Northeast, make the Northeast federally administered territory for the next 10 years.
Okay,
and rebuild that. Those 3 states in particular, whether you want to add the others, is up for debate.
I'm going to give Indi and Wale an opportunity, in 30 seconds each, because we're going to break and then have Professor Sayo join us in a short while. But just to immediately react to some of the things that we've said so far, there's so much still to say and so little time.
Well, I completely agree with Chris that entrepreneurship is key and the informal sector is paramount. I worked on the MSME policy for the country, and it prioritizes all it takes to get people from the informal economy into the formal economy. And one is an enabling environment. There have to be incentives for people to want to register their business or to get a bank account. Unless we create those incentives, there's no reason for them to. Now, Okada drivers, that's a huge economic force. And if you go to India, for example, they figured out how to have street cleaners into an association. That's one of the most street hawkers. It's one of the most powerful associations there is. And the challenge with us is that we see them as dregs of society and we haven't harnessed their economic power. So actually working with those groups to create an association that's a formidable association, we can train them, we can give them access to financing. They can move from being Okada drivers to taxi drivers or whatever. And then there can be rules that govern their engagement, such as don't ride in this estate before 5 a.m. or after 10 p.m. But because we do not recognize them as a force, we ignore them, and then they become a source of trouble or a challenge in society as opposed to an asset. And I think that's the greatest challenge for every state government in this country. How do you view individuals, the poor, the youth as assets and not liabilities? And how do you harness their potential to ensure that we can use them, use their potential and turn them into tax-paying citizens that can add value to our economy? We need to look at countries like India that have done it extremely
It's interesting
well.
that you talk about India, because I recently saw something that says that even though Norway ranks #1 in the Human Development Index, on the positive side, India's HDI has risen by 1.7% annually since 1980. And this UNDP report is applauding India's contribution by way of its spillover development effect on other countries as well. Wale, your quick thought before the break.
Yes, my concern really, and in addition to what you just said, is the engagement of the youth in all of this. There must be an interface, a regular one at that, so it really, really actively engage the youth in terms of energizing, motivating, and ultimately mobilizing them towards achieving some of these set goals. And I see the political process being a major factor in all of this, and that is where, for me, leadership, I keep saying,
comes in. All right, guys, we'll go on that break now. I can tell you we definitely need to sustain this one way or the other. We'll think about how we can get our panelists back in the studio so we can have further talk. But a quick break, and when we come back, Professor James Sanya will be joining us as we wrap up. Still 99.3 Nigeria in for the August gathering.
This is Nigeria Info 99.3.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful time. We hope that you have been in touch with us. We see all the questions and comments on Twitter. A big thank you to everyone who's listening right now. A number of people also watching from around the world via YouTube, our YouTube link that we posted up. We're streaming live. Now, the beauty of this is the YouTube link will automatically save the discussion on YouTube, all right? And we'll share this link so you can, if you missed portions of it or you want to just go back and listen to some of the things that we've said, you can check it out on YouTube. And if you stay in touch with us and continue to check out the hashtag TAG2015, you see everything. Now, Professor James Sayo of the School of Media and Communications at the Pan Atlantic University is in the studio, and he's been here since we started. He's been listening and soaking in every single thing. And with the little time we have, he's going to do a quick executive summary. Good morning to you, Professor Sayo.
Thank you very much, John.
All right, let's get on.
Yeah, the issues that have been raised are really wide-ranging. And Mr. Femi Adesina, the spokesperson to the president, actually started off by identifying the tangible and intangible results which the government has so far been able to produce. And the first thing he said is that there is a clear case of believability. There is a culture of believability which Nigerians have tried to demonstrate with this government. And because of that, there is a clear case of willing to allow the president to continue doing the job he's doing. And that in the area of tangibilities, he mentioned the issue of security, that the government is addressing the security situation with a clear counterinsurgency plan, which is trying to degrade Boko Haram. And he also talked about the engagement with Nigeria's neighbors, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and of course, Benin Republic. And this has also given momentum to the counterinsurgency process in the Northeast. He also mentioned the issue of job security, job creation, and the fact that there is also an increase in the profile of our foreign reserve, which is like some kind of a buffer to the economy. There is also the element of the plan by government to recover Nigeria's stolen wealth, which has been stashed abroad. And I think in his own estimation, this is going to really help in the whole process of economic recovery when all of these funds are repatriated. But he also talked about the NPC and the changes that have taken place there, and the fact that the energy sector itself is being revamped, and that will go a long way to shoring up the economic indices. But he also talked about the whole idea of trying to create a functional police force which will help in the process of intelligence gathering and the war against insurgency.
Okay.
And these are the issues that he raised. Chris spoke about the paramount need to really craft a very creative approach towards combating insurgency. And according to him, it is not the right thing really to do when you are militarizing the whole process without really looking at the other salient aspects of the war against insurgency. And his own estimation is important that we look at having intelligence gathering and then having a very workable police force which will help in the process of bringing about a counter-insurgency plan which will be very actionable and which will help in the process of turning the tide. Indeed, he was very particular about the causes of insurgency, especially as they affect the culture of poverty, which has been entrenched in the Northeast. And she talked about the issue of limited education, which has also worked against young people who work meaningfully and productively to avoid getting involved in the insurgency process.
Okay.
And then the agricultural sector also is one of the issues she mentioned that has also been neglected very perennially now. And that has also helped the whole spirit of entrepreneurship. And because of that, the Northeast has become a breeding ground for young men and women who have been recruited by these insurgents. And according to her, if that is properly addressed, the situation will be turned around for the better. But she also identified the need for us to invest very handsomely in education, because that is one area that people need to have empowerment so that they can be productively engaged. And that will help in the process of stemming the insurgency. And of course, agriculture, which has always been Nigeria's area of comparative advantage, but for some time now has been abandoned because of the monocultural economy we have been running using oil. And the entertainment and creative industries also, she mentioned, are very focal to the whole process of bringing about a renaissance in terms of economic and political existence. Yeah, Olawole joined us later, and basically he was particular about the need for us to partner with the government to ensure that its programs and policies are accomplished. But he's particular about the slowness of the president in putting together government. And that, I believe, is a pervasive worry. Many people are really agitated about this because many of the issues that should have been addressed have been left to follow because of the absence of a government.
As a matter of fact, there was a tweet that summed up, the presentation by the president's spokesperson that said, well, what he gets from Femi Adesina is wait and see. The moment we have an economic team, things will hit full stream.
Yeah,
Did you get that feeling as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And that has been linked with the metaphor of the mud.
Okay.
That they hit the mud, not the ground. So it is not a firm kind of situation for them to begin to run. But I think that is an alibi, because the government actually is the responsibility of government really is to change the situation, no matter how deplorable it is. And it is clear to me that the seemingly inexhaustible bag of excuses will soon become very clear to Nigeria, because there is a limit to what you can do with excuses. It is incumbent on government to begin to really roll, because we are getting to the first 100 days. And the question is, what policies can we really have, can we really see? How can we begin to define the prospects of this government, the nature of this government after 100 days? There isn't a clear
direction.
Yes. And that is the worry which many Nigerians have been expressing. I want to say that these issues are really wide-ranging, and the panel has really dealt with them exhaustively. But of course, what is important is for us to begin to get ourselves involved in the process of governance ourselves. And this kind of program is also very, very important, very, very crucial in the whole process of doing that. But the highlight, which I want to talk about now, is for government to be allowed to its responsibilities, but also to provide that level playing ground so that Nigerians will also have a stake in this government, and they will also participate in this government, so that that program of change will be accomplished.
Thank you so much, Professor James Sayo, for that brilliant executive summary. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to leave now. We are at the very end of the August gathering. A big thank you. Let's give a round of applause. It's a full house in the studio. Can we all give a round of applause to all our panelists and guest speakers? We thank you for additional attention. But Muneli, you were fantastic. You were amazing. Thank you so much. As well as Olawale Olale and Chris Ungwodo, all the way from Jos Plateau State, joining us on the panel of the August gathering today. Thank you all so much much. We'd like to thank every single one here at Nigeria Info FM, from the news team to the Morning Crossfire crew of Ayo Thompson and Onome Google, to everyone else, management, and everyone who's made this possible, to the Enough is Enough Nigeria Coalition, the Guardian newspaper, This Day newspaper, Pan Atlantic University, DigiPlexus that helped us with the website absolutely free of charge, and multicolor, all the beautiful posters, and Brand Culture that helped with PR, online publicity. I publicized Nigeria as well, Yomi Okwe, and everyone else. The list is endless. I just want to thank everyone, and to the Twitter Nation. Please just give a round of applause to the Twitter Nation for making hashtag 2015 trend today. The conversation continues via Twitter. Trust us, we are all there. Indidi, Wale, Chris, and myself will continue to engage on these issues and tell you what to expect next following the August gathering. I'm Olua Sheon. It's been a wonderful one. God bless you. The Midday Dialogue is next on 99.3 Nigeria Info right after this advert break. Good morning.